This is the station yard. Real talk round the table, scars and all. From the first to rush to the long ride home when the sirens fall. Real firefighters, real conversation, laughing through the hard and the heavy on our hearts. Pull up a chair, lean in and listen. Every yarn's got a truth at its start.
Sitting across from me today is an absolute genuine GC, one of the nicest guys in the job, a senior currently stationed at Parnell. You're still at Parnell?
Parnell Blue, yep.
Matt Akers. Mate, thanks heaps for coming on. Really appreciate you being here.
No, all good, man. All good.
Let's start with how long you've been in the job for?
5 years.
Yeah.
So I started off at Onehunga on the Blue Watch there, did a couple of years there, 2.5 years, and then went over to Parnell when Parnell merged with the big house for the rebuild of the station. So yeah.
What were the differences between Onehunga and Parnell for you personally?
Most probably the downtime, I'd say. You know, Onehunga is a quieter station, you know, in suburbia, but when they do get big jobs, you know, they're normally third to fifth alarms. You know, I think the third and fifth alarms I've had have been at Onehunga. Whereas Parnell, it's more of a high tempo station. You know, I suppose a bit like City, you know, it's lots of repetitions of relatively the same things. And then because you've got the aerial appliance there, you get pulled into those bigger fires. So yeah, Onehunga was kind of good to come out of recruit school, you know, do your bookwork, learn off some senior firefighters. And then the step to Parnell was just another learning curve for me for the aerial appliance and just that kind of city firefighting vibe, you know, that kind of high tempo, rinse and repeat type of stuff. So it was good.
So you say third and fourth alarms, is that mainly house fires, factory fires? Because you've got a lot of industrial area, right?
Yeah, it was all commercial because Onehunga's a good mix of like residential and then quite heavy industrial. I think most of Auckland City's heavy industrial is in that kind of Onehunga Penrose, kind of South Auckland area. So yeah, it was all those big fires were kind of factories. So they were all exciting for the first 20 minutes. And then they get a bit boring, you know, when you're 4 hours into it and you're just putting out a rubbish fire. But yeah, the house fires are generally also, as you know, it's, you know, a couple of pumps and it's pretty done. But yeah, the big ones were the commercial properties.
Where did it all start for you in terms of fire service?
Cool, blimey. We're going back a few years now, mate. I think I was thinking about this on the drive up. When I was in Scouts, there was a lad there who, his dad was in the London Fire Brigade. And they were doing this huge brigade exercise. I think it was like 15 trucks. And it was basically a train derailment with about 4 carriages on their side. And they needed basically casualties. So they got every kind of group you could get together, scout groups, guide groups, nurses, all sorts. And they packed you all up with makeup and stuff. And then they scattered you through this train wreck. There's about 120 of us, I suppose, casualties. And I just remember as a kid laying on the floor, you were there for like half an hour while they were setting up the exercise. And after that, a hooter goes. And then 10 minutes later, all the fire trucks turn up. Another kind of 10, 15. And there was some firefighters standing on the top of the train because I was on its side. And they were standing at the top, on top of the glass or the edge of the window. And they were kind of talking. And then about 4 or 5 minutes, they were inside the carriage. And they were kind of triaging people. And then I was like, this looks like a cool job. And you could see the firefighters were taking it seriously, but they're also having a bit of a laugh because it was an exercise, you know, it's kind of relatively lighthearted. And I remember then, I was only maybe 10, I suppose, and I was like, they look like a good bunch of people. And it's kind of, as I've grown up, I've kind of touched with the fire service a little bit like that, and then got to the point where I was old enough at 19 to join. So yeah, that's how it all started. That's where the interest started. Yeah.
So 19 is when you started there?
Yeah, I joined in 1999 in the Kent Fire and Rescue Service in the UK.
Mm-hmm. What were your first impressions in the job?
Good question. Almost like I found where I was meant to be, if that makes sense. I was quite young, 19, and every kind of career I tried or little job I tried, it didn't feel kind of fit. But as soon as I walked on a fire station and, you know, I could see some lads taking the mickey out of another person, and soon enough that was me they were taking the mickey out of. And just the practicality of it all, the feeling of, you know, helping and, you know, being a part of the community, I kind of felt that this is an environment I wanted to be a part of. And obviously lucky later on I was able to earn a living from it and become a career firefighter. Yeah, it was just that kind of, I'm quite a practical person. I'm not sit at a desk, you know, That's why I'm not in business. I was statemented dyslexic when I was quite young. So I think that being dyslexic allowed me to, or the practicality of the fire service allowed me to fit in more and settle in and enjoy a career. So yeah, that's how it kind of, how I felt. Yeah.
Your dyslexia, has that dampened your progression at all, or do you think, or?
No, not really. I think maybe through the early stages, like trying to apply for the full time and apply for the career side of things. Potentially, I'm not too sure. It definitely hampered me a few times. I've tried, I think 3 or 4 times to join London Fire Brigade. I tried a couple of times to join Kent Fire and Rescue Services career firefighter. Even tried for Fins and failed that one. So yeah, so I think when it comes to the theory side of things, when you've got to sit down and put pen to paper, then I think, yeah, I have definitely stumbled along my career. But as soon as you get to things like pack days and practical side of things, then no, it doesn't hold you back at all. Yeah.
Like we all love it, the practical side of things of our job, and most of us are very similar in terms of we'd rather be doing stuff than sitting down and writing stuff. So yeah, it's quite interesting hearing that we've got somebody that struggles with dyslexia, and I know quite a few of the boys that do. Our job gives us an avenue that we don't have to completely focus on the paperwork stuff.
Yes.
And it gives us an out.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Be able to do the practical stuff.
Yeah, I think that's why you find in those kind of service jobs, you do find a lot of people with learning difficulties that they've had through their schooling, but they've managed to excel when they come into the practical side of things, policing, fire service, a little bit of the ambulance. I suppose they're a bit more clever than us.
Yeah, well, they've got to do a few exams to
get
to where they are.
Yeah.
So before New Zealand, you actually spent time with the London Fire Brigade, am I right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was it was about 5 years of the London Fire Brigade. I joined Knightsbridge Fire Station, which was, everyone knows London, it's quite near Harrods, a big posh shop. Yeah, did my recruits, we called them diamonds. So in the UK fire service, I think now across the country, if you're a recruit, you have it's like a black circle with a cutout that looks like a diamond. So you can see the yellow helmet. So it looks like diamonds, basically. And they're on your helmet, so they denote you're a rookie. So I did my rookie time at Knightsbridge, which is now closed, unfortunately. It was just a one pump tearing around kind of the West End and the central part of London. And then I went down the road to Chelsea. Spent a couple of years at Chelsea Fire Station. There was 2 pumps and we call them fire rescue units, so like a heavy rescue unit. And then went over the river to Battersea. Finished at Battersea Blue Watch. So yeah, it was almost like 10 years worth of career in 5 years because of the volume of calls and the type of calls. And yeah, it was great. It was saw some amazing sights and worked with some legends within the fire service.
So the diamonds are like our stripes?
A little bit, yeah. In the UK, you don't have, so there's like 50, or there was 52, there might be like 48, I think, so fire services around the UK, and they're all independent. But pretty much for the most part, firefighters will have diamonds on for their recruits. They're like 2-year probation. They call them apprenticeships now. As soon as you do that, your helmet is yellow forever. Like there's no senior, QF, senior firefighter. So there's just one sea of yellow when you look on the fireground. See, they're not really like our stripes. Well, I suppose they are. Yeah. So when you lose your diamonds, it's like getting your QF, I suppose. Yeah. It's just a different rank structure as such within the fire service. Yeah.
What was it like working in London?
It was good. I've actually had this question posed a few times to me, and it was felt like electric when I went to work. I didn't know. At work when you're a busy station, 80% of your calls, you know what they're going to be. PFAs. You might get some other funky ones in there. And London was no different. But there was this underlining tone of carnage that could happen because we had a lot more people, a lot more variation. There was the terrorist threat was higher. There was always risks of people blowing stuff up, trains being derailed in tunnels. The buildings were older and so didn't have as much fire protection. There wasn't much sprinklers. There was the risers that we had were pretty naff. So the probability of stuff going wrong was quite high. So it was, yeah, I liked. It was like an electric field to go to work. You never knew what was going to happen.
I saw a little video on your page.
Oh, yep.
A little YouTube video.
Yeah.
It was pretty hard to pick you out, actually. But Was that your recruit schools?
I was in maroon gear.
Yes.
So yeah, we used to have maroon level 2s with big chrome helmets. But yeah, that was my recruit. So yeah, many years ago. Yeah, that's running around.
Funky tunes going in it.
Yeah. That's good. That was a long time ago.
So what stands out about the pace or the nature of the job there compared to here?
They're very similar, and I was in a big city, big metropolitan city, so it's hard to compare that to say like a county brigade like Kent or East Sussex or Cornwall. But the only thing I could compare it with is most of the stations I served in are like a city station, busy, big, lots of people, lots of stuff going on. You still have the same problems over there as we do here, the same gripes, the same moans around the mess table. It's just a bigger machine. There's more people. When I was in, there was 6,000 people, career staff within London. So it's just on a bigger scale. But the fundamentals are exactly the same. There's no difference. I find here in the state, when I've been around, like, you go down to Nelson and talk to those people, and I've been lucky enough to see a few volunteer stations around, like Northland, and everyone is just really happy and relaxed, which is quite nice to see. In England, it can be a bit quite formal and quite kind of paramilitary kind of, there's a little bit of a drive between officers and firefighters sometimes. It's quite regimented in certain areas, whereas here I find it's a bit more kind of regimented when it needs to be, like on the fire ground. Everyone switches on and what the boss says is what you do. But it seems here everyone seems a bit more friendlier. Can be, in certain areas. But the actual camaraderie on the watches is exactly the same. You make some of the best friends you'll ever have in your life on the watches, and that's the same. Doesn't matter where you go, really.
So, in saying that, then coming from like the London Brigade to then going into the airport and then to Onehunga, like that must have been quite a bit of a change. Going, oh man, I'm so used to being in a fast-paced, busy station to some quiet stations, right?
Yes, it was that, and I've had that most probably throughout my career. I joined as a retained firefighter, which is like a paid volunteer, I suppose. We got paid, but we had daytime jobs, and I did that for 9 years. But the last 5 years, that was at an airport in the UK, which was quite slow, just a small airport. So I was kind of used to those ebbs and flows of calls, and then like you said, joining London, and then only the airport here. So I'm kind of used to having that ups and downs of calls and busyness, and just try and find different areas within the job for my interest to spark. Like being at the airport, we had hovercrafts, they have got hovercrafts and boats side of things. So that was all new to me. So I kind of leapt on that to try and learn as much as I could and learn from the older guys. So yeah, it's kind of, I found that I will always concentrate on things that I don't know and find people that know more about that than I do and stick to them, Just like in Onehunga, my senior firefighter, he knew the patch, lived in the patch. So I would just quiz him all day long about, right, what's this, what's that, let's go and have a look at this crazy building and what have they got in there and these chemicals and all these things. So yeah, I think it's just trying to find interest within your area. If you're at a slow station, fair enough, but find bits that you don't know and exploit those, really. Yeah.
So what's the call volume like in the stations that you were in London?
The same as Auckland City, I'd say, the same volume. So kind of around about 3,500, 4,000 calls. So I was in A division, well, it used to be called A division. So I think Soho is a central station in London, quite famous station. I think they're on about 8,000 calls a year. They've got 2 pumps and a turntable ladder. So I think City's on about 4,000. So yeah, so it was kind of, as you look at London, obviously it's busy in the middle, and then as you get out into the suburbia, the kind of calls drop off slightly.
Same as here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same as any big city around the world, really. So yeah, it was kind of, I think at Knightsbridge and Chelsea were definitely busier than Battersea, because Battersea was a little bit further removed, but it was still, you'd be doing 5 calls a night maybe. And because you had the heavy rescue tenders, you might be on different things. So the pump might be busy. It might be a Friday, Saturday night. So they're out doing little bits and pieces, whereas a rescue tender might not go out all night long. Or it might be the other way around, So, yeah. was kind of similar call volumes.
And the training, the recruits course, was that sort of similar to what we do here, or?
Yeah, because we've kind of followed a little bit in the European way we fight fires, so that the recruits is very similar. Ours was 15 weeks for London, and you came out as a pump operator and a firefighter. You weren't a driver, but yeah, very similar. You know, the first 4 to 6 weeks, the instructors don't really talk to you that much. You know, they're the boss, you're the recruit, and then towards the tail end of the recruit course, they get a little bit more open up to you a little bit and
Want to get on the piss?
Yeah. Treat you with a little bit kind of, you are a human after all.
Yeah.
The same fundamentals. You know, they teach you from day one, discipline, rolling hose, and you build on that all the way through your course. So yeah, very similar. Yeah, it was just done in the buildings were like 300 years old. The buildings we were doing them in, so years. But what we've got down in NTC, I think, is world class, and I think a lot of firefighters don't realise that, or maybe don't realise that it isn't a great facility we've got compared to others that I've seen around the world. Not big enough for what we have, but what we've got there is pretty outstanding. Yeah.
So when I went down for recruits course, it was very basic then.
Yeah. Was it still down at NTC? Or?
Yeah. So as you know, I pushed out my senior firefighter stuff.
Yeah.
But when I finally went down to do my senior firefighter courses, I went down there and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is out the gate now.
Yeah.
Everything, like, it was huge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
All these new buildings put up and train wrecks and
Yeah. The tunnel and the petrol station was there.
Yeah.
So it is great. You know, it needs maintaining, like all these things. Actually, what we've got, it's really good. You know, you know, when you look at I've been to other training facilities around the UK, and it's nowhere near as good as what we've got. So yeah, it's good.
In the UK with their training centre, they have accommodation on site?
Some do, some don't. So in London we didn't. So I travelled in about an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes each day, each way for basic training. Some county brigades will have accommodation. A lot of them will just use hotels. So it just depends on where you're living and which brigade you're joining at the time. Yeah.
I honestly reckon put some barracks in there.
Yeah.
Chuck everybody in the same dorm.
Well, the 12 weeks we had down in Rotorua, I think was better for team building than when we had in London. Because in London we were all coming every day, we were commuting. So you only build that team within the 8 to 10 hours during the day. But in Rotorua, you go for a beer in someone's bedroom during the, if someone's having trouble, especially during the week, you can say, come on, mate, come in. We'll do knots and lines in the bedroom, whatever.
You want to do knots and lines in the bedroom?
Well, you never know. So you can help each other out more in a residential course. Yeah, I think it's much better. Yeah.
You obviously moved to New Zealand.
Yep.
What was that time like for your family, and also having you as a firefighter? When you were in the job in London, were you with your now wife?
Yes and no. Yeah, obviously I met her. So she's a Kiwi New Zealander from the shore. Moving was a crazy experience, giving up your job that you've tried so hard to get into and you love. You've got a great station, a great watch, and then you have to resign was just mental. Like it goes against everything that I've ever tried to do. It was an experience putting that letter across my boss's desk, which he just laughed. He was like, why are you doing that? You're crazy. But yeah, so that was a crazy thing. And then to move to a country where we had nothing. Her family are here, so that was good. But I had nothing, I had no job, no career, just finished that one. So yeah, it was a weird feeling. And my parents, or my mum and they've split up, hated it. I'm an only child. I've moved the other side of the world. And I've now got the only grandchild the other side of the world. So yeah, it was really rough on them. And I think all immigrants, when we come over, it's really hard to start with, because you leave everything behind, So yeah, it was a rough. Well, it was exciting for me because I was in a new place with obviously my fiance at the time, but for family back home, it was pretty tough for them. Yeah, and I think it is still now tough. We have these first things, like my daughter, she's just going to intermediate school and doing all these things, and they kind of do miss out a little bit. Yeah, it's we try WhatsApp every week and send photos and stuff, but it's not the same as being there. So, yeah, it is tough.
So Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, was who do you leave behind?
Well, like I touched on before, there's only me, so there's no brothers or sisters. So yeah, mum and her husband, and then my dad and his wife, and then obviously cousins and aunties. We're a big family, but we're not overly close. And obviously your mates, you lose your mates behind. And it's funny, yeah, as soon as you're not in the circle anymore, as time goes on, you kind of drop off friends. So, which is only natural, but that was a hard thing to get my head around, moving into another country, and then all of a sudden you realize you don't actually have any mates. At 30, what was it when we moved over? 32, 33? Like all your friends disappear, your friend group. So it's a strange feeling to build that back up again, and it takes a long time. It's not. And what I found was, you have your closest friends. The majority of them are built from when you are 15 to about 26, and you do all of that thing. You party together. You have first girlfriends. You have first wives, first children. You do all that within the first kind of 15 years of your life, and then you build that relationship, and then you leave, and then you have no one. And then it's hard to get friends again. And not what I mean by that is hard to get those same friends that you had before, because you haven't gone through all the hard stuff together. So it's the friends that you do make in later in life. They're more like acquaintances as such. Until you start doing hard things together, which is why the fire service is so great, because you get thrust into an environment where you don't know these 10 people on the watch, but all of a sudden you're doing some extremely hard things together. So you create friends very quickly. So I think that's one of the benefits of the fire service. So yeah, but it was weird. It was weird, man. It took a while.
How did you deal with that then? Like, did you turn to any good vices, bad vices?
Not really bad vices. I'd kind of had an experience earlier on in my life that made me learn from having a bad vice. It's not a good thing. So when I had, immigrating and moving and having all this, feeling all these things, I knew not to touch the alcohol as much, and not to do those things. And I had a partner as well, which helped. She was from a stable family. So yeah, so it was kind of, the vices that I did kind of lean towards were more kind of healthier ones, going to the gym, going for walks. We bought a house, so it was kind of, everything was focused on the house, renovating that. So no, it was more, how did I cope? I don't think I really did cope, I'll be honest. I just kind of, typical bloke, you just soldier on, go to work, pay the bills, go to work. And it kind of reared up a few times during the years, the first couple of years of being quite lonely, and not really having anyone to turn to, or not being able, especially coming from England, where it's a very social and pub culture. Like, I'd be in the pub 3 or 4 nights a week, and you'd be yarning to the people behind the bar, or old Jeff sitting in the corner smoking darts, and so you'd kind of always have those people to talk to, and then you don't have anyone, because we don't really have a pub culture here like in the UK. So for the first couple of years I was a bit lonely and a bit kind of like, didn't really know what was going on, and just, you kind of lean towards those work friends. So yeah, luckily, touch wood, it wasn't any bad vices. It was kind of just experiencing moving to another country and lapping it up, basically.
And that pub culture though, like, so I went over for a holiday a few years back, and you walk into a pub as a complete stranger to anybody, like a tourist, the whole pub stops and they're just like staring at you like, who's just walked into our bar? But then you go in there and you start talking to people, and next minute you're like part of the team. It's quite cool.
I went to a pub so like I said before, I used to work at an airport in the UK, and we used to have to go up to a place called Teesside to do your certificate to be a firefighter. That had to be renewed every 3 years, and every time you did an officer's course, you went up there. So I went up there one time to do, I can't remember what I was doing, and so this is an international training college in a very small town, mining, kind of like a rural market town. So on my course in this there was me, there was people from Germany, there was a few other English people, and then there was a couple from Barbados. And the man that was sitting in the Barbados group was 6'6", this huge black guy, really nice man. He was on the course, he'd flown over for 2 weeks. So we went out on a Tuesday night, and of course, the Germans go in and just look tall but white. We, us English, all go in, and then this guy comes in, he ducks to get under the door, and again, the whole pub just goes quiet. And everyone's like, who is this? And like you said, but within 10 minutes, we were all buying rounds and yarning and drinking. So yeah, it's a great culture to be around, grow up in. Yeah.
During that period, what sort of support did you have, apart from obviously your wife you mentioned, around that transition?
Yeah, not really, man. Just people back home that were on their Zooms and calls and stuff like that. But no, pretty much you just have to figure that stuff out yourself. I had, like I said, I had it slightly easy because Ginny was from here, so she knew about bank accounts and houses and good places to live and not live. And the people that do it hard are the immigrants that come here and they don't know anyone. They've just got maybe a couple, especially if they don't learn the language. It's even harder for them. So yeah, I had it quite easy, I would say. But yeah, the support was just through Ginny and my wife and through her family, and then through friends back home. I've got a one or two good mates back in the UK that I can always ring at any time, and one of them is now, he's also a firefighter, he's also a counsellor as well, so hopefully I'll get cheap rates.
I was actually talking to the missus the other day about like friends and acquaintances, and I've come to learn recently that, a lot of the people that you call friends are actually acquaintances. But the ones that I now call my true friends, I could ring them at 3 o'clock in the morning and they'll be like, "Bro, I'm on my way."
Yeah.
Those are friends.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people expect to have like 20 or 30 of those friends. When the reality is 2 or 3 is all you're going to get. And that's all you really need, and yeah, like you said, everyone else is kind of an acquaintance, and they have like a sliding scale. So, someone you meet at a headquarters office might be an acquaintance over here, but this acquaintance here might be someone from another truck from an appliance that you meet and you're good friends with. But yeah, the actual close friends, you're only going to get 2 or 3 of those, I think, in your life.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And those ones, like the ones that I call my day ones, they we will call each other out on our bullshit as well. We'll be like, "Mate, cut it out."
Yeah.
And we might go, "No," but we'll go, "Oh yeah, okay, you're right. I should,"
because they're seeing things from a different angle and stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Okay, so what are the big differences between London Fire Brigade and New Zealand Fire Brigade?
I would say, again, I'm talking from the London Fire Brigade that was 12, 13 years ago. It's changed rapidly since then, and they've had some historic events which have made that change. I would say the biggest thing is just money. It's just pure out money. It's the biggest fire service in the UK. I think the next one might be Manchester, but they've got an awful lot of money and they do an awful lot of things with that money. Some good, some bad, obviously. Whereas I think here we have still got the same passion and drive and the intention to be as good as we can be as firefighters and the fire service, but we just don't have the money. I think if we had the same budget as they did, well, they do, even half of their budget, I think, a lot of our problems would go away that we see now. But yeah, the main difference was money, budget, and most probably more of a logistical thing. So we live in paradise, as you know, and we live in the kind of the Pacific. So to try and get things here is very hard. I think in New Zealand we can play within our sandpit quite easily, and we can put our heads down in the sandpit and that'll be fine for 50, 60 years. And because we don't really border anyone, it's hard to gauge how we're playing. We can look at the Aussies, but again, they're quite big and they've got lots of money. So it's hard there's not other countries that we can look at or that are close to us that we can go, "Oh, you're like us. What are you doing?" So whereas I think in Europe and UK, because they're so close to everyone, they rub shoulders a lot more with brigades that are the same size, same budgets, doing the same thing. So that drives innovation, not only through products, say boots. In Europe, if you want to go looking for boots or gloves, you might have 20 different suppliers. Whereas here, we might still have those suppliers, but it's a lot more hurdles to get those down here. So that's one of the biggest differences as well. It's just the opportunities to look outside your sandpit and play outside your sandpit with other people. I think is as New Zealanders within the fire service, we have to do a lot more to get individuals, firefighters, officers out into those environments to experience that and bring that experience back to us. Yeah. And I think the world is changing. Things like podcasts, you know, you can spend a few hours on a podcast and learn something that's being done in Europe and implementing here. You know, you don't actually have to go over there and see it. You can just listen and look at things and contact people now. So I think the world is definitely shrinking.
Well, I mean, you know, talking about the podcasts, you look at all these American podcasts that are out there, firefighting podcasts, they're literally doing training sessions on podcasts now. You can sit here and learn exactly how to do a technique or anything that they're doing by just watching a podcast now.
Exactly,
Like, it's crazy.
And people, I think, are a lot more acceptable for reaching out. You know, you could say to someone, oh, just listen to your podcast. This subject here, how do I contact that person? Oh, sweet, here you go. Here's a contact and off you go. So, yeah, I think the kind of COVID podcast, that wave of information that came out has been game changing. We just need the people in the right positions to realize that and act on that, really. So, yeah.
As we know, we love saying, oh, but that's not how we do it in Auckland, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, no, we don't do it like that. Is there anything from the London Brigade that you wished we did here?
Again, it just comes down to budget. You know, I think I like the model of having we had 12 heavy rescue tenders that were fully staffed with 5 people, and they sat alongside a pump on those stations. Some of them had 2 pumps, some of them had 2 pumps and a ladder. But what that model allowed us to do was, when you were on the rescue tender, because the calls were less, you could train more. So you could go out and you could hang off a crane, or you could jack up a tunnel exercise, or you could drop the boat into some water and do some swift water rescue. So it allowed you to become a little bit more, gave you time to become more honed in your skills. Whereas, you know, riding an ET, you don't have, especially on a busy station, you don't have any time to cut up cars or go and hang off stuff, you know, because you're getting called out all the time. So yeah, I wish we had that model where we could have more specialist appliance and give them the time to be specialists. I think that would be great. I think with the new underground system coming in, that's going to give us more opportunities or avenues to train and to prepare ourselves, I think, for when it happens and not if it happens. But we pretty much are the same. It's just a different model, a bigger model. We still operate the same. You know, if I took you to London Fire Brigade or a Fire Brigade in the UK, within about a week you could be on a machine. But there'll be no difference. The equipment's the same, the procedures are the same. We follow the same Swedish model of fighting fires. The camaraderie is the same. You know, the pumps they look a bit different. The pumps are all at the back and not on the side. But yeah, you know, it's more of a money finance issue that would be nice to have over here. Their funding model is completely different. It's not done by levies. It's done through everyone pays their tax, and out of that tax comes money for the fire service. Yeah, I would say most probably the budget, the way we're funded, would be bring that across. But as far as procedures wise and equipment wise, it's very similar. You know, yeah, they've got more of it. It's a bit newer. The appliances roll over a lot more quicker.
Not like roll over here though, eh?
No,
not roll over down there.
No, that kind of roll over. No. So yeah, but like I said, mate, they're not that different. I don't think personally. The camaraderie is the same on the watches, you know. And then if you go to other brigades around the counties, they do everything that is exactly the same in London, you know. But they just do it in a different flavour. So same as I'd imagine if, like you said, you've worked down the line in different brigades. You still put water on the fire, but you might do it in a different way, or slightly, you know, you might set up for a PFA in a different way. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So you're saying about the heavy rescues. So is that the same as what we've got out at Papatoe? Or oh yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So if you imagine Papatoe, but
12 of them in Auckland.
Yeah, I mean there was Auckland's 1.5 million.
Yeah, but you know,
yeah.
Just more of them.
Yeah, way more. If you imagine every rescue tender was a heavy rescue tender, you know, yourselves, Henderson, all those places. If you imagine them as just as a heavy rescue tender, so there was no water, just rescue equipment, and then you had a pump next to it. You know, maybe four or 5 hours on the pump, 4 or 5 hours on the heavy. That would be representative of the London Fire Brigade. But that's not indicative of all the fire service in the UK. A lot of them don't run that. They run the model that we have, where we have a rescue tender that's a pump and does everything, you know, does house fires, does MVAs. London do it that way because they can, and they've got the money and, the space and the budget to it, and the people. So yeah, but it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So after London, then you moved here. Was it pretty much like straight away that you moved here after leaving the brigade over there?
Near enough. Yeah. We you know, jacked the job in, and I think within about a week we were on a plane out of the UK with just a couple of rucksacks. And my wife loves travel, and so do I. So we spent 2 months around Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, and then Malaysia, and then landed in New Zealand. And so I was kind of out of work for maybe 4 or 5 months, but I'd been an arborist, a ground operator in the UK on my days off, because most firefighters in the UK have second jobs, nearly all. So I went and worked for Treescape for a year when I moved over in QMU. And then, lucky enough I failed the Finns Fire Service exam. That was when it was 3 hours paper. Yeah, so and it wasn't, I didn't go in overly confident. I knew I'd find it hard, but I just went in underprepared, and I fluffed the maths part of it completely. So luckily managed to score a job with the airport, and I was there for 8 years before coming over. But so there was just like a 2-month travel gap that we did when we moved over.
That must have been stressful though. Like, I mean, obviously you said you jumped into the arborist role, but not knowing if you got a job or not.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I contacted the fire service when I was in the UK and said, "Hey, I've got these qualifications, these skill sets," and they were like, "Yeah, that's cool, but join the queue." You know, which is fair enough. You know, they said, we have thousands of people who apply, and the way the recruitment works is, they've got to offer it to New Zealanders first, which is absolutely understandably fine. So yeah, it was a little bit stressful, and I always knew I would get into the fire service. It would just take me some time, because I don't really think I can do anything else. I can, I could go and work in a vineyard. I'd never be in an office. I've done it a couple of times for a very short time and hated every minute of it. So I would always be a practical kind of money earner as such. But the fire service is such a great job that I knew I'd get in. It just might take me a bit of time.
Auckland International Airport?
Yep. Down in South Auckland. Yeah, there for 8 years.
What led you into that was you couldn't get into the fire service, so you jumped through?
Yeah, not that the airport is second best to the fire service at all, but I'd worked in an airport in the UK for 5 years. I had all my qualifications through the CAA, and I knew going into the airport fire service what it would be like. I wasn't misled or construed into thinking it would be like the fire service, because I knew the aviation isn't like that. So it was great, man. It's a good job. Lots of toys to play with, and just different skill sets. They've got the whole marine rescue side of things with the Manukau Harbour. It's the second largest harbour in New Zealand. I don't know. I have to quote me on that one.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. And then they've got the medical side of things, which I really enjoyed, actually. My old man was a medic in the British Army. My mum was a nurse, so I've always had that kind of upbringing of helping. So I really enjoyed the medical side of things. It was kind of more than what we do at work. We just do CPR. Whereas at the airport, they go a lot more into diagnostics and treatment-wise for people in the airport. So really enjoyed that. And then you got the firefighting as well, but it's in aviation, firefighting is very small, luckily, touch wood, they don't crash that often.
They've got some pretty epic training facilities out there, though, for the airport fireys, eh?
Yeah, they have. Yeah. I mean, that's the same the world over, really. Every airport should have a really good training venue. I don't know what's going on there now, because obviously I haven't been there for a while. So I think they're going through some change and through some development with their fire ground, which is good to see. But most of the time, ICAO, which is a governing global body for aviation, stipulate that you should have an aircraft mock-up or rig the same size as the aircraft that is using your airport on an average. 365 days of the year. So yeah, most airports will have a good training facility. Some of them will have some buildings, maybe some hot boxes training and stuff like that. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I remember a few years back now, I guess. Yeah, it must have been a few years. Like Josh and Bolts organised some training out there at your guys' facilities, and man, that was awesome.
Yeah, and they're real keen to help out. I think if any watch or fire station out there in Auckland wants to go along and have a look, and they're real receptive to working alongside, because at the end of the day, if it all goes sideways, we're all going to be working together, so building those relationships is really key. But yeah, they're always keen to have training and do training, and
yeah, that was a cool thing too. Like it wasn't just our boys, like we were working with the airport fireys as well, and they were jumping in on the same scenarios. It was real cool.
Yeah, and I think that's where, as firefighters ourselves, we need to work hard in building those relationships and lowering those barriers between services. Whether it be career staff with airport staff or career staff with volunteers, or we're all doing the same job.
What were the biggest challenges or adjustments out of the airport for you?
As in coming from overseas or coming?
Let's talk about from coming overseas.
Yeah, again, it was going into. I kept having to remind myself, I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm not in London Fire. We haven't got the budget. We haven't got the staffing or the real estate to do that. So again, I kind of revert back to what I said. I looked for things that I didn't know, and I've always done that throughout my career. Find people that know more than me. I've always wanted to be the stupidest person in the room, and surround myself with people that are more skilled in other areas or more knowledgeable, and learn from them. So yeah, it was an adjustment, as in it's not where I'd come from, but what they had got was areas that I didn't know, like the marine side of things, the medical side of things. So I really kind of leaned into those areas, and then used my experience when needed to for rolling up a hose or gas cooling in a box, or all those kind of things. So yeah, I just moved towards those things that I didn't realize, and not try and compare what we were doing to what I'd come from, because it wasn't. You can't compare. No, it's just not. And I think that's where a lot of immigrants who have been in the fire service come over. I think that's what trips them up, is they try and compare it, or this isn't the way we've done it before. And I'm like, lads, you're not back in the UK. You haven't got the staffing levels, the budgets, I think New Zealand, although it's very specific in the risks that we have here, like earthquakes. We don't have earthquakes in the UK, or big weather events like what we're going through at the moment. But what we have had in the UK is a lot of big incidents, which we've learned from. So we've had a lot of firefighters die over the years, a lot of big things that have moulded and shaped the fire service to what it is now. And whereas I think fire service, like, because we're quite young, is in years wise, we have to learn through that vicariously through other brigades. So yeah, I think immigrants, when they come over and they've been in the fire service, really struggle, because they're like, try and compare it. I'm like, shut up, we're not. Just learn what we're doing here. This is what we are, and concentrate on that. Don't, just use that skill set you've got in the back pocket when you can and when you need to. Yeah.
And so for somebody that's looking at joining either the airport fire service or FENS, like, what's the team dynamics like? What's different between the New Zealand airport firefighters and FENS?
I would say none. There is no difference. The teamwork, the camaraderie, the level of enthusiasm is exactly the same. Whether you work at my station or you work out at the airport, is exactly the same. It will be the same banter around the mess table. It will be the same hard work going on in the gym. It will be the same head scratching in lectures that you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. No, it's exactly the same. They have different skill sets. We have our skill sets. So no, it is the same. If you work well in teams, you'll be just fine in either fire service. And that's the same the world over, So yeah, I would just recommend that they lean into those fire service, whichever they want to go and find out, reach out to those.
And what's the roster there? Do they do the same roster?
Exactly the same. Yeah, they jump an hour early.
Oh, yeah.
Just for the traffic, in South Auckland. So Yeah, same roster, same 2 days, 2 nights, same colour watches. It's just they start and finish an hour earlier than us.
And is that the same in London? They still run on the same?
Yep. Yeah, they do red, blue, green, and white watch. And
they don't want to do brown watch.
Yeah, funny you should say that. When I went to the airport, I was who was showing me around? Oh, I won't say any names, but yeah, someone was showing me around, and we're kind of going around the station, and we went to the nominal roll board, like I have at City. And I was kind of looking at it, and the guy showing was like, this is what we do, and this is the names on the trucks. And I was looking at it, and the words came out of my mouth before I could stop myself. And I was like, what's wrong with brown watch? Why don't you have white watch? And stupidly, I don't know why, I just shouldn't have said anything. Again, because I wasn't comparing, but I was just like, oh, in the UK, everyone has white watch. And this guy looked at me and went, you don't like brown watch, brown people? I was like, well, no, I didn't say that. I was just saying it, and he was laughing, but yeah, it was quite funny. But yeah, so they have white watch. But yeah, the same, they jump a little bit later in London. I think they finish at 8 o'clock at night, start at 9. But again, each brigade is different. Some a good mate of mine, he does self-rostering at their fire station, which is just weird. They can do a 24, and then they can do a day here. They've just got to do so many hours per month, and they pick and choose. So it gets rid of the watch-based system, which is really good for the pen pushers, but really not good for us as firefighters. So yeah, it does vary.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watch a lot of American podcasts, firefighter podcasts, and they talk about A shift, B shift, C shift.
Yeah.
They do like 48-hour shifts. Some of them do 90-something hour shifts.
Yeah,
it's like 90 hours.
That's crazy. Yeah. I was talking to someone actually recently about shift work, and they were looking at clinical trials for sleep deprivation, stress levels, cortisone, and they were saying the same thing. And the trials that were coming out was saying that 24 hours, doing a 24-hour shift with 72 hours off, and then 24 hours is the best for your circadian rhythm, stress levels, was one of the best shift patterns to do, which is what they were trying to implement in their fire service where they were in the States. But yeah, they do some crazy shifts over there.
Yeah, and especially with some of the calls that they go to. And
and the volumes,
backing it up with a shift like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you find that transition from the airport fire to fins?
Yep, pretty easy. I'm not going to lie. The airport out there, their training their standards are really, really high. So, you're training 2 times a day, most probably doing drills out there at the airport. So I felt really confident going from the backing, what I'd learned from the airport fire service going into fins. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. It was just a few little adjustments here and there, but they were pretty minor. The actual skill set and fundamentals are exactly the same. The way equipment's exactly the same. The commands are the same. The way they put ladders up is the same. So yeah, I didn't have a problem at all with it. Yeah, it was good.
I mean, we know most of the boys out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think, actually, I don't know if I know anyone out there anymore because they're all in the fire service now.
They're all come across.
Yeah. Just waiting for you, Scotty.
Yeah.
Was there anything that surprised you though?
Coming across?
Yeah.
The pay?
Yeah, because the pay with airport fireys isn't too bad, eh?
It was, yeah. It was. I think it's on par now because we obviously had that industrial action a few years ago, which kind of brought us up. Yeah, when I moved across, me and my wife were working it out. I dropped 100 and I think it was like 110 or 120 out of our income for our house, $1,000 when I moved, because it was a combination of a few things. So I went from kind of the top tier firefighter rank, money role, I suppose, down to the bottom again. And then my wife got made redundant during COVID. So we lost her wages, plus mine were being chopped well below half. So yeah, so it was kind of a bit of a crazy time. Lots of beans on toast.
2-minute noodles.
Yeah.
So coming from the airport and obviously being at the level you were saying you were at, and then obviously dropping to the bottom, did you find earning trust as a potential know-it-all of being in the fire service, did you find that hard?
No, because I'd kind of done it before. I'd done it a couple of times. It's just a case of not, like you said on your podcast before, you've got one mouth and 2 ears, and you should use them in that ratio. And that's very much the same, when you've got a lot of experience and then you're going back down to the first run of the ladder, you keep that experience in your back pocket, not in your mouth. So you don't need to be telling people that you've done 20 whatever years. You don't need to. You just keep that quiet, and you prove to other people how good you are through your actions. So that's being the first one from the mess table into the sink, washing the dishes, being the last person to go to bed, being the first person to get the mop to mop the floor, being the first person to wash the appliance. All those things are what you now need to do. You need to go back to being a recruit. However many years ago that was when you first did it, that's how you need to be now. But with the experience, it's like when you've, at the age of mid-40, if you went back to being 21 again and being single, but with the knowledge you had from being 41, you'd be lethal. It's the same with being in the fire service. You go back to being 21 again as a recruit, but you've got all this experience, but you just keep your mouth shut and you hard work, and you prove to people that you can do the job through your hard work, not through your vocalizing of what you've done and waxing on about this X, Y, and Z, because that doesn't build trust in other people, because people don't trust what you say, they trust what you do. And if you're doing a good job, then they'll trust you.
Yeah, but this is like I said at the start, you're like one of the most humble dudes in the job that I know, and you're a senior firefighter now, and so you've done 5 years in this job specifically, right? With it obviously like a bit of a career behind you.
Yeah.
And you're still first to get the mop, first to get out there and do.
Yeah.
You don't really. I don't think I've ever heard you speak out of turn as such, and run people down.
Yeah. Again, I try not to, and if I am, I'm normally at the end of my rope. Just because I know that some of those things aren't beneficial. There was a lady called Jill Heinrich. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a underwater photographer, and she's done some amazing things. And she was she was giving a lecture once about how she was diving underneath a moving ice shelf, and she had gone in underneath this big ice thing, done what she needed to do inside this big ice cave, and then she was on her way out, and the ice tunnel where she was coming out actually was starting to melt and rain, and the water was forcing her back down to the point where she was now stuck under the ice and she was running out of air. And she's telling this story through this, I think it was a TED talk, and she was basically saying that she had to switch off all emotion because none of that mattered at that time. What she needed to do was run through facts, through her safety procedures to get herself out of the situation she was in. And I kind of apply that a little bit to sometimes around the mess table, in the back of the fire engine. Yeah, we've all got an opinion. But sometimes those opinions are like ourselves, you don't need to be using them all the time. So if it's not really going to benefit anyone, generally I'll just keep my mouth shut. I won't. If someone's being a bit of a dick, and they can be a dick, it doesn't really affect me. I'll only get a bit vocal if it starts to affect me or the watch I'm working on, But most of the time it's not going to have a better outcome. I'd rather save those opinions and voices for situations that I'm in that might change things for us, So
all these experiences that you've had, all of the fire brigades that you work with, do you think they've shaped you as a person today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've definitely helped me to be and they've, I've grown up in the fire service. I joined at 19. I've gone through a divorce within the fire service. I've gone through mild bouts of depression within the fire service, and every time the people around me and the people that I work with have pulled me back up and shown me, and it's been a metronome within my life. I've always had to go to work. I've always had to turn up and relieve the night shift. Whatever has gone on in my life leading up to that point doesn't really matter because the person I'm relieving wants to go home. So I have to be there. So it's been this kind of constant beat through my life, really. So absolutely it shaped me, and I've learned from people I've worked with. I've had some great mentors along the way. Yeah, and
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Oh no, not me. Oh.
And I wouldn't be here today without those people, really. And I owe a lot to those people. Yeah, so it's changed me.
how do you bring that experience to station life? Like not just the going to the calls and things like that, but sitting around that station.
Again, I think it's just leading by what you do, not from what you're saying or some of the experiences you've done. And it's just, who was it? I was a GM in this job. I asked for his advice when I was moving stations from Onehunga, and I said, what advice have you got for me? You've been in this fire service for an awful long time. You've seen a lot of things and been to a lot of stations. What can you give someone who's quite new? And he basically said, just don't. He said, be the person you want in front of you. And what he was basically saying was, if you've got all the experience, don't hide that, but give it to people that need it at the right time. So, yeah, I would say I try not to say too much, but I try to do a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
to kind of explain.
Okay, so you've taken some advice from somebody that's been in the job longer than you, or and is now a GM. What do you try and pass on to younger firefighters?
Quite a bit about humility, being humble and respecting the people that have come before you, and embracing what the fire service has to offer. It has to offer us so much through life skills, through avenues of employment. You can be a firefighter for 50 odd years. We all know people like that, and they're an awesome asset on the back seat. Or you can go off and be fire safety and move into promotion. So yeah, I would just say to people, just embrace everything. Put your hand up for everything. I came from a generation where you never stood out of line. You got a job because you stood still and everyone stepped back and you got voluntold to do something. Whereas now I'm a bit like, just put your hand up for everything. Do everything. Try everything. Go on every course you can. Be humble. Be polite. And always be the first one in the mess to wash the dishes. Yeah.
All right, going back to personal life, what does family life look like for you now?
Now is amazing. Yeah, now I'm a dad, I'm a husband, homeowner. Yeah, and I live in an amazing city. I think Auckland's a great city, and I think you just need to get out and see other cities to realise what we've got here and how special it is. So yeah, it's good. I've got great support from my wife. She's seen a lot through me, good and bad. Yeah, and I really enjoy being a dad. That's like one of the best things I've ever done. It's amazing that me and my wife have created this amazing human, and to watch her grow up into what she's developing into. So yeah, family life's good. Wish I could do a bit more fishing, a bit more diving. Would be good. But yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, the work-life balance here in New Zealand is amazing. And the opportunities that are out there are only hindered by your imagination or your drive to go out and do them. I know so many people with boats, and I've been on so many boats. It's amazing, to come from England where it's wet and cold and a bit miserable. When I moved over, the first thing I wanted to do was go spearfishing, and I think it took me a few years and to find the right people to do it. But before I knew it, I was diving with huge bronzies and watching people spear kingfish and fight sharks off, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, what an amazing place to live. So yeah,
every second firefighter's got a boat.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if they don't have a boat, they're going hunting.
It's a great environment and a great country to promote, that kind of outdoors. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
So how do you find balancing work and home?
It's hard because, as you know yourself, we have to earn overtime, or not that we have to rely on overtime, but because we live in a big city, we've got big mortgages, big bills, so we have to earn more than, say, someone who lives in more of a rural setting. So yes, it's hard to rein in sometimes the amount I work to pay the bills. I'm not really materialistic. I like nice things, but I don't strive for it. So I just strive to put food on the table and to give my daughter the best that she can have, all the opportunities she can have, and and help my wife pay the bills and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's kind of just a balance, and sometimes my wife has to rein it in and say, look, don't do overtime tonight, this week, and trying not to let work dictate my family. As in, like, missing out on swimming or something like that, because work is just work. It's a big machine, and we are just a name and a number. And sometimes we can trip ourselves up a little bit, thinking that our experience or our being within the fire service is actually more than what it is. And it isn't. We're just a name and a number and a position and a seat, and within 60 minutes someone else will be in that position if we're not there. So it's getting that balance right. And I think that's a real difficulty with older firefighters, the ones that have been in for 40 years. What do they do when they retire? The fire service is their whole being. So how do I balance it? Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, juggle act, through renovating our house, and then trying to squeeze in like little dive trips and fishing trips. And so it's just a juggle. It's like anything really.
Yeah, just touching on Matt's lack of materialisticness, I guess. You won't be able to see, but he's currently got no shoes on. He can't afford them. He didn't do overtime this week.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go do a night shift.
Yeah. If you could give one bit of advice to someone thinking about moving from overseas to here, what would it be?
Come first. Easy. Don't be one of those ping pong poms, or those. That drives me up the wall when I meet English people that just moan. I just want to throw something at their heads. Like, if I'm ever around those people, I just won't say anything, and I'll disappear like that Homer sketch, when he disappears into the hedge. I just won't say anything. Come here first. It's not in England, for instance, or in the UK. New Zealand is perceived as, it's like England but 50 years ago. It's not. It's a different culture. People are different. They drive on the same side of the road. That's about it. Like, we're not the same, and we shouldn't be the same. We are a country that is unique and diverse. So come here first. Come here on a long holiday, 4 or 5 weeks, as much as you can get off. Move around the country, see different places, speak to different people, and try and experience as much as you can before you make that decision. Because once you move, it is huge. Like, it's leaving everything behind is massive. And I think there's a lot of people in England that make that, or the UK, sorry, that toy around with that. They're not in a great place. They're a bit miserable, and they're like, I just want to go live somewhere else. But to actually do that is a huge thing. Age is not your friend. So to get a working visa, you need to be a certain age. If you come over here when you're 40, the chances are you won't get a visa to get in. You have to get sponsored. So I would say come here first. Experience everything you can. And if you do decide to come, don't moan. Don't moan about things that aren't the same over in the UK. Don't moan that the public transport isn't the same. Don't do that, because you might go home. Like, go back. Come here and embrace everything. Embrace all the problems. Embrace the colourfulness of the country and the experience. Don't moan.
What still makes this job the best job in the world?
The people on the back seat of the fire engine. Wholeheartedly, that's what makes it work, and what makes us still coming back. Not really. You're never going to be rich in this job. It's the people, and it is definitely the people that make this the best job in the world. And it's the fact that you can turn up on any given day and try and help someone. I think that's a great feeling to go home with. That sometimes you help people and it's good. Sometimes you help people and it doesn't turn out so well. But whatever you've done, you've tried, and you've tried with your mates. And that's it.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing all of that. Even I've learned some stuff about you today, which has been really cool.
Yep.
You've had a pretty incredible journey through the fire service, and I reckon a lot of people will take something from this yarn. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share it with somebody that might enjoy it. Otherwise, really want to shout out to you guys and say thank you for following us on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify, and listening in. Got some more cool yarns coming through, so keep an eye out for those. Otherwise, cheers, brother.
Cheers, mate. Nice to see you.
This is the station yard. Real talk round the table, scars and all. From the first due rush to the long ride home when the sirens fall. Real firefighters, real conversation. Yeah, we're stitching up the brave and the scarred. Pull up a chair, lean in and listen. got a truth at its start. At its start.